Hey everyone, it's Mike here at Angry Jellyfish Games. I just got back from the Buffalo Regional for Universes. I played Sung Jinwoo, and I had a really good time at the event, and I think I did pretty well. The deck performed about how I wanted it to, so I'm just going to go through the deck itself and all my choices and my rounds for anyone who wants to see what this deck is all about. So I was inspired to take this deck by someone who top 16'd the Glasgow Regional, Thomas Horrocks, out in Scotland. He played Sung Jinwoo on Life, basically used the whole attack kit that the deck gives you, plus Falling Titans, and then a Rising Uppercut, 2 Harness Undeaths. I thought that looked really good. The big change I wanted to make with his deck was instead of playing on Life, which gave him some better zero diffs, and then a few tech pieces in Pump Up, Mashos, Incredible Display, I thought it was really important to play Death this weekend as your main symbol, just because I wanted to play Forcing Surrender in my deck as a way to deal with Equipment Heist, so you can just kick out of the card pool, and then the added benefit of being able to kick your own grinding overtime if you use it to level up on your turn. That was a tech piece I really wanted, so I took this skeleton and then made that shift, cut the life cards that I couldn't play, and then filled in from there. So this is the list that I ended up with, and I'm just going to go through card by card and talk about why it's in the deck. So first, let's look at Sung Jinwoo himself. The Shadow Monarch skill tree really put a lot of new life into this character. So Sung Jinwoo is a 6-hander with 30 health, and he has this response at the end of your turn. You remove an XP card from your hand or your stage to level up. And then leveling up gives you these abilities, so you want to level up 4 times throughout a game. The first one lets you once per turn form to play a Shadow Shift attack from your discard pile. That's any of the new attacks from his kit. So it basically turns you into a 7-hander after the first turn, which is really powerful at a baseline for a 30 health character. Once you hit level 2, you have a very defensive once per turn enhance to give an attack -2 damage for each shadow card in your stage and card pool. So by turn 2, that was usually a -4 damage that you had on board. I think the most I got out of it this weekend was a -14, which just completely nukes an attack and makes it not matter anymore. At level 3, that's when you start getting really powerful, especially offensively. You get Shadow Exchange, which is an enhance to sacrifice a backup, draw a card, and give an attack plus or -2 speed. Once you can sacrifice your own backups as an enhance, it means that your rival just isn't allowed to attack your backups anymore, because you just get to abort the attack on your first enhance. They never deal damage, they don't get more enhances past their first one, and their attack doesn't do anything. They don't get momentum. So that's really powerful, and then it draws a card, so that's why we're running Jaegerist Follower as a 1-diff backup that we can really spam our board with to have all these extra cards in our stage, essentially. And then the plus your -2 speed is just small but very useful stat pump there to use offensively and defensively. And then finally, level 4, the Monarch's Domain is enhanced. Your attack gets plus X damage, where X is the number of shadow cards in your stage and or card pool +2. So if you're playing a shadow attack, you're giving a minimum of +3 damage. When I was playing and doing attacks at level 4, I was usually giving +5 or more. And that's when you really just turn the corner and it can actually take out your opponent. So the attacks you have available to you, the first is Bear Bite and Tank the Shadow Bear. So this is your only mid attack in the deck, but it is a throw. If your opponent doesn't block it, they have to sacrifice Foundation, and then it shifts into a backup that commits for -3 damage. So combining that with your level 2 once per turn, you just have multiple sources of solid damage reduction on board, so you can blank or just ignore more attacks from your opponent defensively. This card is really useful. This was almost always the form I would take with my first level, so just start a turn with the bear, because you can really pivot in either direction from that. It's a throw, so you're probably going to do a little bit of damage or eat up one of their tech pieces that can get rid of that keyword or something like that. And yeah, it's just always going to turn into this backup for you and add to your stage, and you can either string out from there or just pivot into a Bill's turn. Shadow Sorcery was one of the main win conditions of the deck because of how the whole card works, really. So it's a 4/4 at its base. It blitzes for +2 speed for every copy of Shadow Mage in your stage and every copy of Shadow Sorcery in your removed pile. So by the late game, you would have one or two of these removed, and it would be a 6 or 8 low at its base. If you're adding stats to it because you're level 4, you get another 2 speed on your face and another 3 to 5 or even more damage. So it just becomes a very potent low attack very quickly. But also, as the Shadow Mage in your stage, it has an enhanced to remove to pick up a spell attack that you can either use as a block or use to extend a string. The only spell attacks I had access to in this deck were more Shadow Sorceries and then 3 copies of Harness of Death. So this is another one of the kill conditions in the deck. This card is a very powerful secret rare from Critical Role. It punishes opposing backup decks, but also lets you justify these Jaegerists in your deck as backups that are going to fill up your discard pile, so that when this hits your opponent, they're going to lose a bunch of health based on backups in both discard piles. And yeah, it's a spell attack that you can pick up with your Shadow Sorcery, so you can really extend your strings that way. Occasionally you'll have a momentum to do the Echo Cost, and then this just closes out games. But most notably against opposing backup decks, where you get to count the backups in their discard pile too, this is coming in for, 7 or more damage more than it looks like a lot of the time. Rage Riot. This is, in my opinion, the worst of the new attacks as an attack, because it's a 6 diff, so if you start with it as your first form and check a 3, you're already kind of behind on your resources. It's a 4 high for 7 with no built-in way to gain speed, so the only speed increases I really had in my deck were Sung Jinwoo himself, and then Chivalrous Charge, which we'll get to in a minute. But this is a very blockable 6 diff attack is the issue here. So I didn't want to overuse it. The biggest uses of this card were it is a +0 high block, so I was holding it in my hand quite a bit for that. And then it says after it deals damage, you build it transformed. So if it does hit your opponent, it's going to clear itself from the card pool and turn into Iron, which commits for +3 damage, which is nice. But more importantly, this is a backup killer. If you go throw this at an opposing backup, your opponent can't block it, so it being relatively slow doesn't matter. It's going to kill most of the backups and then immediately transform itself to give a future attack that 3 damage. So it was a tech piece mostly for that, mostly for the high block, and then also just because it is an XP card, you can remove it in your opening hand to get that first level up. Falling Titans is one of the plan Bs in this deck. Since you're playing all these Jaegerists, and since most of your other attacks have shift, you do get 4 or 5 backups in your stage pretty easily, and then Falling Titans can just come down and say, hey, I'm gonna try to check a 6 a bunch of times to try to check you for high blocks and just kill you with no progressive. I found that this was maybe the worst card in my deck, honestly. It just didn't really work out for me. I wanted to be sacrificing my backups to my own ability, which draws cards and gives speed, rather than to the Falling Titans response. And there were enough blanket answers in the format to Falling Titans anyway that I really never felt comfortable going in on this plan. I think I might have played this card once during the weekend, but most of the time it was just getting reviewed at the start of the turn. Chivalrous Charge. This is the last of the attacks for Sung Jinwoo's kit. So this is a 3/4. It blitzes for +3 damage, and then if your rival has an empty hand, they draw a card. The thing about this is your rival is never going to pass you with an empty hand, so I was starting strings with this a lot of the time, or even just playing it as my second attack, and it was a 3 for 7 every single time. I don't think I gave my opponent a card with this for the entire weekend. So high damage, 4 diff move, you're checking for low blocks. A lot of the high damage moves in this deck are lows, so your rival has to really commit to those low blocks. And then it transforms into Egress, who comes in committed, but passively it gives all of your attacks 1 speed and all of your rival attacks -1 speed. So he's almost acting as a foundation or two in that sense on defense, because you're better at blocking all their stuff. It has -1 speed. And then if he survives that turn, then he is ready on the next turn. You can enhance to pick him up, put him right back in your hand, and then continue stringing out. So one of the big strengths of this deck's attack string is between Egress and Shadow Mage. You have these backups in your stage that can turn into more attacks, and you have Sung Jinwoo, who gets an attack out of the discard every turn. So even if you draw your opening 6 and only have 1 attack, you get +1 here, +1 from each of these in your stage, +1 from this in your stage. You can present way more attacks than you should be able to just from your draws off the top. So when it's time to turn the corner and you have that level 4 damage output, you can turn it into an overload of attacks, really no matter the situation, which is really good. I played 2 Rising Uppercuts. This is mostly here as the block trick. So if your rival plays a very fast, high move, you just say, I'm blocking this on a 4. I did do the response on this a decent number of times to send it back at my opponent. Most of the time, I wouldn't do it unless I either, if I knew it was their last attack and I wanted to send this to pick up a momentum to pay for the Harness on Death echo, or if I was level 4, you can do your huge attack buff on your rival's turn. So you could send this for, a 4 high for 8 or something in the middle of their string if that was going to be enough damage that they had to care about it. But yeah, really just a block trick in here. Very useful tech piece. One more note on Harness on Death. The card pool response in this card is crazy. So whilst in your card pool, when your rival loses health, you gain a health. This deck is very defensive and will just take a lot of hits from the opponent. You're going to try to blank an attack with your big DR, block wherever you can, but like something that you're using tank on for the -3 damage, you're still going to take that remaining damage, so you're going to get to 20 or less health pretty quickly. Harness on Death, because you can block with it and even pick it up with Shadow Sorcery to block with it, then says anytime your rival loses health, you gain some health back. How they lose health on their turn, we'll get to that, but this was really just as much of a defensive piece in my deck as it was an offensive piece. Military Airship is the only asset I played. I didn't get it out too often, but when I did, it was very useful. This card is just very powerful. It's really worth it as a 1 copy in almost every deck in Standard. It's pretty hard to justify not running one of these cards, so I was able to borrow a copy for this event and run with that. Filled with Doubt, again, a very versatile card on defense. I only played 1 in the main and the second copy in the sideboard, and I'm fine with that ratio. I probably could have gone to 2 in the main if I really wanted to with an extra in the board. It's not going to stop everything because obviously it's a card in your hand, so you're spending it to just seal an attack, and then you still have to deal with the stats on the attack, and it takes up space in your card pool, which can be annoying, but it's a nice tech piece to have that answers a lot of things that are scary in this format. Grinding Overtime is the last card from Sung Jinwoo's kit. This is the new action. It is a 4-diff action. Enhances on your turn to level up. You can only play 1 copy of a turn. That's fine. It does stay in your card pool after you do that, so you're giving yourself progressive, and it's going to be on a 5 all the time because you have to start with an attack, then play this. So it's really a pretty big cost to do that. The only time I ever did it was when I could go form an attack out of the discard, use this to get to level 4, and then have a way to get it out of my card pool, usually with this forcing surrender to just kick it out of my own card pool, and then go from there with a string. So the enhance on there was probably the least used part of this card for the weekend. It is also a +0 mid-block with Breaker 1, which is really nice to have. +0 block zones are crazy. People don't always expect you to have them, and when you do, you can really mess up their math for what they thought you were capable of. And then this is an XP card, so you can use it to level up, and when you do, it, instead of getting removed, turns into a Hierarch Soldier, which is a backup in your stage. he just kind of sits there. He is a shadow for your things that count shadows, so it's extra damage reduction. He's also a backup, which you can use for sacrificing to your own ability or readying your copies of Night's Rest on your turn. And then if you later remove the soldier to level up, you gain 2 health back, which came up every once in a while. But just a really good, versatile piece, really important for the deck, really good on defense, has that offensive potential. I would never play less than 4 of this card in this character. Finally, we have Replicator Enthusiast in the actions. This is kind of a pet card of mine. I like it as the 1x in here. It does exactly one thing really well. So this card is Enhance Remove, choose a foundation in your stage, build another copy of that foundation from your discard pile, and then your rival can build their top card. So what this is doing is building your most powerful foundation, Death Rattle. Death Rattle is a 2-diff that says, after one of your backups is destroyed, your rival loses a life. So since you're level 3, lets you sacrifice backups to draw cards and give speed, you start killing your own backups a lot. Also, your rival is going to be occasionally attacking your backups to try to take some of your power off the board. Death Rattle gets to punish them for that, and that is also an extra win condition in this deck. I won a ton of games, a bunch of matches where I couldn't kill my opponent on my turn, but I could get them to like 4 health, and then with multiple Death Rattles, my defense just let me do those last few pieces of damage on their turn. So it kind of didn't even let them attack me because they would die if they did. So I just got to close up a lot of games that way. This also has a very strong deadlock form. It just straight up commits to destroy a non-unique rival foundation of your choice. This is very useful in the Rodan matchup, the Deku matchup, those other control matchups where they are going to be building into deadlock because you are forced into a slow game playing yourself, so they're given the opportunity. This lets you kind of even that playing field a little bit and take out their key foundations if they decide to build past that. Yes, Replicator Enthusiast builds that extra copy of Death Rattle, because going from they lose 1 health when you kill a backup to they lose 2 health when you kill a backup really adds up very, very quickly. The one other time I used it this weekend was to build a second copy of Desperate Struggle. This was a little more niche. I only have 2 copies of this in my deck to begin with, but it's a very powerful defensive piece. I was playing it against a Deku 5, so having this available just like blanked their one big attack, so they had to play around it, and then I was able to put a second copy in, so they had to play around it more. So a slimmer scenario, but still nice to have. Alright, then we have Jaegerists. So this is a card that you can play up to 10 copies. I think playing all 10 is a mistake from a deck building perspective. I stuck with 8, which felt pretty good for the weekend. So this is a 1 stamina backup. He has 2 abilities. You can enhance to look at the top card of your deck, and then you may choose to mill it. So you can peek your checks, or you can peek at the top card of your deck before you sacrifice a backup to Sung Jinwoo to draw a card. So you have a lot of card selection there, a lot of not quite check hacking, but check peeking. And then once you start getting multiple copies of this out, it's enhanced commit to this attack gets -1 speed for every 2 copies of Jaegerist Follower in your stage to a minimum of 1. The first time I read this card, I thought that it meant that this always committed for at least -1 speed. That's not what that means. It means that if you have like 8 of these out and you're giving something -4, that attack can't go below 1. I learned that in the 1 day of practice I had before the event with this deck. But this is a really nice defensive piece. It's basically acting as a spam foundation on defense, because once you get that second copy in play, committing for a -1 speed is basically the same as committing to pass a check. I think I got to 4 copies of this in my stage once the entire weekend, so it wasn't going to get to that mode pretty often, because I was really aggressively sacrificing them to my Shadow Exchange ability. So I could commit this for -1 speed, sacrifice it for -2 speed, and draw a card. That's just a ton of card advantage, a lot of defensive stat manipulation. This was a key part of the deck, and again, it synergizes with Harness Undeath for making that a lethal attack, and Death Rattle for making that a game plan. On to the foundations. So I played one copy of Double Dungeon. This is from the original Jinwoo deck. It's a 3-diff unique foundation. It is also an XP, so you can pitch it to level up. It has a response. After you level up, you ready this card. And then on your turn, you can remove this to level up, and you can't level up again that turn. So you really only want to do that if you're getting to your final level with this. This was totally fine as a one-of. I think I used the remove on it twice the entire weekend to get to that level 4 to really try to push through a lethal string. But really just being a 3-diff that readied at the end of my turn all the time was decent. It has a fine block mod. It is an XP card, and you need to run a certain number of those in your deck to make sure you always have one in your opening hand and, something available to pitch from your hand in the later turns. So yeah, I wouldn't run more than one, but it was fine to have. Dramatic Exit is a unique foundation. It's a 2-diff. It enhances to give plus or minus X speed, where X is the number of backups in your stage, +1. I'm going to tell you right now, I just read that +1, and I didn't use it for the entire weekend, so I was playing this card incorrectly. Oops. Yeah, this card is fantastic. It's unique for a reason. I probably should bump this up to 2 copies in the future. I was committing this for -5 damage a lot of the time. Apparently it was supposed to be 6, but whatever. Or -5 speed. So it just, again, you get to blank one attack by hitting the speed with this, blank an attack by hitting the damage with this. Your defense in this deck is so strong once you get to level 2, level 3. Moment of Normalcy. It's another card where it's hard not to have this in your deck right now because of the infinity symbol. Enhance commit, return an attack to its printed speed or damage, so you can mess up someone who has a big powerful attack or a big EX attack or whatever it might be. You can also use it if you get hit with a barrier shield. You can return your attack to printed speed. It's just really versatile, really powerful. I don't remember the last time I've registered a deck without one of this card. Dark Ward, I played one copy of. It's another one where I would have liked to fit a second in the deck. It was just hard to fit that many 2-diffs. I can't use the enhance on this, so it's just a response. It flips to cancel a responsibility on a card in your rival's card pool. The main things that I was hitting with this were you can hit a Falling Titan's response, you can hit an Echo, you can hit a Goblin Bolt cancel, and most importantly for this event, you can hit the response on Fillet Fling, which is being used in all the Bridget decks to do extremely broken things that we'll talk about later. But having this up to cancel one of those is very nice. It gets rid of a lot of silly broken things in the format when you have it up. Improving Skills is the next XP foundation from the solo leveling deck. This card's really bad, but it has XP, and you have to run a number of those to be okay. So there are 2 XP foundations that we're going to talk about that have a response when you remove them from your hand. This one is if you remove this, usually to level up, you build your top card face down committed. So it's almost like you just build foundation when you level up, and you keep that card advantage going. So definitely running for this for any Sung Jinwoo deck, unless they give you something, if they give you better XP cards in the future, which seems very unlikely. I'll just skip to the other one of these right now. Item Menu is another XP foundation. It doesn't do anything in play, but when you remove this from your hand, you draw cards to replace it. So, if you have this in your hand to level up with, it feels great. You just get that card back. Easy enough. Loyalty of a Friend is your next big defensive foundation. It's another unique foundation. I did run 2 of this one, in part because it's just more DR. It commits for -1 damage for each backup in your stage, so it's another way to just nuke an attack so that you don't care about it. So having the second copy was nice because it was more likely I would build it, even though it's unique. But also it is a breaker 1 block on a 2 mid, which is useful, so you don't feel too bad when it's an extra copy sitting in your hand. And the Deadlock Enhance gives +2 speed for each backup in your stage. Didn't come up too often because my opponents didn't go into Deadlock very often, but when it did, it was nice to have. I would commit this for maybe a +6 speed sometimes, just to push through one of those attacks that had a bunch of extra damage from Sung Jinwoo. Primarily, though, this was committing for -3 to 5 damage on a rival attack. Syndicate Target is a card about numbers. Yeah, 0 diff, 6 check, plus 0 low, all very important. When you block with it, you lose a health. That's usually not a big deal because you're blocking like a Walk the Dog or a Smashing Stomp or something like that. Yeah, I needed some zeros. This is one of the best ones out there on my symbol. Night's Rest, I was really impressed with throughout the weekend. So it's 2 diff and it's the 2 mid block, which are both things that you don't want too many of in your deck, but commits for -2 speed, so nice little debuff there. But the big thing is, once per turn, you can commit it back up to ready this, so you can do that on your turn and your rival's turn. So on your turn, if you play your first Bear Bite and check 3, you want to commit your Night's Rest first or your Double Dungeon first. And then you can ready this with either a Jaegerist follower, which is another way to kind of turn this guy into a foundation, or a lot of the time I was using a High Orc Soldier to ready it. Sometimes you could even use Egress to ready it because you didn't necessarily want to use the enhancement on Egress to pick him up. You just wanted those extra stats. So you have a lot of access to backups to ready this Night's Rest to give yourself extra resources throughout the turn cycle, which is really, really strong. Yeah, I was very impressed by this card. I don't think I would go to 4 copies, but 3 felt very good. 3 copies of Botan's Coaching. This is another 0 diff. It's one of the best out there on the symbol. I don't need to talk too much about it. A lot of times, because you are removing a card from your hand to level up, if you don't have one of the ones that replaces itself, you're going to go down to like 1 or even 0 cards into your rival's turn a lot, especially in the mid game. So having this as a way to just draw a card if you're empty-handed is really cool, and then you get to draw more cards with Sung Jinwoo. Forcing Surrender, I talked about a little bit. You get to kick Grinding Overtime from your card pool, or kick a foundation you blocked with on defense, or if your rival's on an Equipment Heist deck, that is an action you can take out of their card pool. The other thing I did with Forcing Surrender a lot this weekend was against Bridget decks. But if their game plan is to play an attack, flip it during the next one for speed, and then play a Fillet Fling to pick up that first face down, sometimes I would just kick the first face down that they had, because then I didn't care if they hit me with their current attack to put a face down into their momentum, because there wouldn't be a face down there anymore, and their Fillet Fling, if they played it next, wouldn't have anything to pick up. So I got to mess with their strings a little bit. I think it worked out really well. This card is really, really good in the current metagame, and if you're on these symbols, I suggest it. It is the only reason why I was on Death this weekend. Warped Pleasure is another kind of pet card of mine. What this does mostly is enhances once per turn on your turn, any player with 6 or more foundations destroy a foundation. So since a lot of your build turns also involve Jaegerist followers, you're going to get to 6 foundations slower than your rival. So this enhance is going to be one-sided a lot of time, which is really nice to just deny them some resources as you're trying to build up, especially if you're starting a turn with Bear Bite and saying, hey, you either have to block this or sacrifice a foundation, and then if you also have Warped Pleasure there to make the blow up foundation, you can take away a lot of resources at once. And then if you get them to 10 or less health, your attacks get +1/+1 while you have this, which doesn't come up too much. You're really not attacking them until the very late game, at which point your attacks are pretty big, and you might only get the stats from this once or twice. But really just there for the first enhance. Definitely not necessary for the deck. I could probably replace it with the second Dramatic Exit, and it would be a little bit better, but a fun card for the weekend. Talked about Desperate Struggle as just a really strong answer to things in the format. And the Leveling Strength, I just wanted 1 more XP card to be happy with my ratios, so this is a Spam Foundation with a low block, which I was short on. I think I used the enhance on this once this weekend during a for fun practice game, so that's really not what it's there for. It is there to either pitch from your hand as an XP or to be a low block. And finally, the sideboard. Second copy of Filled with Doubt, 1 copy of Devastating Loss to fight other backup decks or Massive Mutant Machine decks. Yeah, basic one there. 2 copies of Kaya's Compassion. This is after you take a hit from an unblocked attack, you play this and your rival has to play a non-attack next So you played against those string decks. I would bring it in against Bridget's and Mikasa's if I had fought any things like that, and just a reasonable defensive piece. Detailing the plan, I expected a good number of throw decks this weekend because the new Nago Ryuki throw, Bloodsucking Universe, is a very strong card. I thought there would be more people playing Nago. There were a lot of people playing Grog throws, and I did fight one of them, and this came in clutch there. So just a little bit of throw hate on the symbol that I'm playing. Not too bad. Attack Titan emerges. This was me being too cute. I think I brought it in once, maybe. My plan with it was against mostly Devil Jin, but maybe an overhaul. Those massive mutant machine heist decks. If I didn't have a Forcing Surrender in play, a lot of those decks are playing low attacks, so you can block with this as a +1 low block, and then sacrifice a 2 diff foundation to build a 1 diff foundation out of your discard pile, and have a surprise answer to their game plan. Never came up. I didn't actually fight any mutant machines the entire weekend, but just a cute little sideboard plan I had. And then Showdown. This card's really powerful. I brought it in against mostly just the aggressive decks as a nice block trick, and then you bring it into City Rampage decks because you can cancel an action. I reviewed it a bunch. I blocked with it once or twice. It's just Showdown. It's a good card. If you're on these symbols, you have to at least consider running it in your deck. And that is the deck list. This is Sung Jinwoo. I really enjoyed playing this. I was happy with almost all my card choices throughout the weekend. And now we can actually go into the event itself. So round 1, I played against a Hanj Zoe on Fire. I won 2-0. This match mostly came down to I was just able to find Harness Undeaths very, very early. I think in both games I only went to level 3, and I was able to present a echoed Harness Undeath for a lot of damage because my opponent had quite a few backups in her discard pile, and I had just enough in mind to make those lethal. That is why I'm playing the Harness Undeath package, to make these kind of matchups a lot easier for me. It was what I was looking for, and I found it, and I won. Round 2, I played against Corey Nelson, the king of the slow decks. He was on Deku 5, Midoriya on the move, doing the one-hit thing. He was actually my only true loss of the weekend. I was able to take one game off of him, but because my deck is so slow, he has a lot of time to find the answers to my answers. So, like the last game, I presented double Desperate Struggle, plus all my other defense, but he was able to go Goblin Bolt to seal both of them into one huge attack for my life total that he can give Flash. And that's just something I wasn't able to deal with. I was able to answer a Flash attack once when he Cheerleader to give Flash. I got to Filled with Doubt to seal it, then removing Flash. But then he was just able to send another huge attack the next turn. Also, he ran Violent Animus Shot. I think he had 2 in the main, 2 in the board, I want to say. I'm going to check on that. Yeah, 2 in the main, 2 in the board. This was the hardest card for me to fight all weekend. This card's insane against me because my backups are so powerful. This is just always going to blow them up. The one cool thing about fighting Violent Animus Shot is that when it hits you and it says that you remove a random card from your hand, if you're stuck with a Grinding Overtime or a item menu or an Improving Skills, those responses that normally care about when you spend them to level up, they just say when you remove them from your hand. So exactly one time this weekend, I was able to take a hit from an Animus Shot with only an item menu in my hand to then draw a new card, which I felt very cool about. But ultimately, it didn't actually matter. So, I picked up a loss versus Corey. Round 3, I played against Justin Martin on Bridget. I took a draw. I think it was kind of a die roll issue. So no, it wasn't even that. It was just draw. One game I was able to establish a very defensive board. It took me quite a while to then turn around for a kill. The next game, he was able to string out with a City Rampage into a Smashing Stomp. He caught me without a low block in hand, so I got hit by that. Once he realized that the low attack was coming through, he was able to flip that Smashing Stomp and then pick it up with Fillet Fling and then replay it. So he just sent like 20-25 damage worth of low attacks before I could get to a point where I could draw extra blocks or have other ways to deal with it. So yeah, there was the game where he killed me before I was level 3. There was a game that was slow where I killed him. And then game 3, we just didn't get to finish. So just a draw there. Round 4 against Matthew Antonio and his King Ghidorah deck. I actually played against him in Louisville, the one other regional I played this season, where I played Pony. He was also on King Ghidorah. We fought to a draw there. Basically the same thing happened this time. I won game 1 after like 30-35 minutes. Game 2, he presented a really strong string, and I had just enough defense to get down to 1 life. And then I started my turn. There were 5 minutes on the clock, so since I had won game 1, I knew that if I could just play 2 or 3 attacks, the enhanced steps would get us through to the point where I would be the person who went second in overtime, and the game would be a draw, but I would take the match. I drew my opening hand. It was 6 foundations. I had one way to pick up an attack with my backups, so I played my first attack out of the yard, and I think he had a Genkais for it, so I didn't get to the enhanced step. I just lost that first attack. I couldn't pick up anything else. Didn't have any extras in my hand, so I just had to pass back with like 3 or 4 minutes on the clock at 1 health against a deck that could tutor a block zone or attack zone or whatever. So he took game 2, and then overtime was called, and that was that. So draw there. Round 5. It was kind of an awkward match versus Nilo Barker and his Grog deck. A very cool Grog deck. There were a bunch of versions of this in the tournament. It was basically Grog throws. Game 1, we both drew our opening hands, and he said, hey, I have to call a judge. I didn't sideboard. And he showed me his hand. There was like a filled with doubt or something in there that was clearly from a sideboard. So he got a game 1 game loss, which meant that we got to sideboard and start game 2 with him on the play. I was pretty sure I knew what his deal was, that he was going to be on throws, or it was open deck list, so I should have just had full access to it. I don't think I actually looked, but I was pretty sure he was on throws, so I boarded my throw hate, and I was just able to, deny him rage counters and just sit there and get to a high enough level where my attacks are going to do a ton of damage. I basically didn't attack him more than once a turn because I didn't want to give him any rage counters from my stuff. So yeah, I just built up and won game 2 pretty easily, and that was all I needed to do. Round 6 versus Josh Adkins and his sick Kendo Rapid deck, which I'm going to open up here and just look at real quick. I did 2-0 him. Yeah, I think he just couldn't quite deal with all of my DR. He had to go in very early, and he knew that, which meant that he made really aggressive plays that just couldn't quite break through, and then was left with minimal resources, and I was able to just stabilize and not care anymore. His deck was really cool, though. It was both like this Echo deck using Kendo, and then finishing off with Tyrant Rave. So like he would play 3 bullet punches on a 5, and then his Tyrant Rave would be counting 4 attacks or something. But also he got to be an equipment heist deck. So I didn't get to see this part. He never drew it against me, but he gets to also heist into mutant machines or airships or whatever. So that alongside Rappa's ability to blow up Foundation to help pass a check, he can present crazy strings really, really early. I just had good enough defense to take him out. Round 7. At this point, I was like 20th place in the rankings. My opponent, Nate DeWalt, was 19th. We were both at this like X1-2 bracket. We determined pretty quickly that the winner was going to top 16, the loser was going to probably top 32. He needed the points. I went into the event at like 50 points, so I was already queued for day one. The only way I would get enough points to make day two was if I won the entire event, which I was already out of contention for. He only needed to lock top 16, so he asked me to concede. I let him have the win because I had a good experience playing against him at an earlier event. I knew he was a good guy and had really worked hard for it. It was also like 9 at night, and I didn't want to start a control matchup against a Rodan deck against a player who was very, very good at Rodan. So I was totally fine just taking the L there and finishing out my day with that. So as far as matches played, my deck ended up 3, 1, and 2, which I think is slightly less than I would have liked, but still a very strong showing. Really, only one deck beat me. I did happen to dodge all of the Mikasa 4s in the room and all the Deviljins in the room, so I don't know how good this deck is going to be into those or other Mutant Machine decks. So that's some testing I need to do towards looking at Worlds. But I was really happy with the power level and the strategy I was presenting. Definitely a few changes I would make. The biggest one being that I wanted to cut Falling Titans. So after the main event, where I ended up in 33rd place on Breakers, I cut this Falling Titans, and then the following day I joined up with some of my buddies from the Undefeated at Locals crew, and we entered the teams tournament, and we managed to win the whole thing. I went 3-0 in my games. I played against a Krista deck that either top 8 or top 4 in the main. That was really, really cool. We only played one game in our match. He had a City Rampage into an attack, and then Airship, pick up City Rampage, play it again. So he's like checking +4 on everything, and then he drew probably 14 cards across 2 Walmaria's Mites and was stacking his deck the whole time and doing all the Krista things, and somehow managed to be exactly 1 attack short at the end of it, and I was able to just turn around and kill him on the backswing. But a really fun game there. Round 2, I played against a Rodan deck. Another really tight matchup that I was able to take 2-0, I believe. It again just came down to the control mirror. I had a very easy time getting to level 4, and once I'm there, I can just present way more attacks than is reasonable. He also kept resetting our board with Unyielding Destruction, which I think he realized after was probably not the strategy he should have been doing, because since I had all these backup resources, I didn't really care if my stage went down to 4 foundations. I could play pretty much the same level of defense against him. So yeah, I was just blocking stuff, DRing stuff, and living until I could swing back with a good string. And then round 3, I played against Travis Tangeman on a really cool Bridget deck that was using Hang 10 to just draw 1 billion cards. That's his like second or third attack. Just a ton of foundations that committed for 2 speed. Very, very cool deck. We played to overtime on game 3, where I was able to present a line that got him to 1 life, and then I would have like a bunch of backups, and I had double Death Rattle in play. So technically, since he was going second in overtime, he could have played a foundation past the turn, and our game would have been a draw, but he decided to concede, since if he plays an attack there, he just dies to my Death Rattles. So very nice of him to do that. But yeah, the deck performed with a 3-0 there, so then if you look at the whole weekend with games played, I ended up 6-1-2, which is a record I'm really, really happy with for the weekend. So yeah, as I said, the changes I would make: cutting Falling Titans. I'll probably turn this Warped Pleasure into a second dramatic exit, and then mild tweaks to the sideboard, depending on what the meta is looking like. And then the only other change I really want to make in this is finding something else to pick up with Shadow Sorcery. This card was very nice to be able to remove this and pick up a decent block, but since the only spell attacks are other Shadow Sorceries and Harness Undeaths, it only ever picks up a +1 high. So these are all the other things it could pick up. Most of these attacks are pretty embarrassing to have in your deck, so I could either like play a Grove Keepers to just have access to a +1 low block, but that seems terrible. What I probably will do is put in 1 copy of Helper Harm so that those mages can pick up a +0 that actually has a block trick. When you block with this, you gain 2 health, or if you're at fully ready Foundation. And like, this card isn't great on offense, but you can just discard it when you need to. Otherwise, it's just like a stun 1 for mid 4, basically. But yeah, just having that little bit of extra versatility on defense, I think, would have been really nice. Even if I picked this up to like half block a low, that's better than not having any access to a low block off of those mages. So yeah, that is the deck. Those are the changes I would make. That is how my weekend went. It was a really, really great time. Right now, this is definitely my front runner for what I will be playing in Worlds in February. I'm going to look a little bit at the new cards that come out with King of Fighters. I'm going to look a little bit at how Bridget decks are shaping after the event. There's definitely some cool things there that are kind of my style, but can close out games faster. If I do play this, since I have to fight through day 1 to make it to day 2, draws are something I really need to avoid. This is a naturally slow deck, so it's more likely to take a draw than most. So if I can find a more aggressive deck that I'm comfortable with, I might play that instead, but otherwise I'm sticking with this. It's very much my jam. I was really happy with it. Absolutely outperformed my expectations. Okay, so that was my event. I'm going to quickly shout out my teammates for the teamed event. Blame Siren and the Master George from the UAL Discord. Big shout out to Paul Butler, who roomed with me for the event and was just super chill the whole time. And then shout out to the UAL team in general. I'm going to be seeing the vast majority of them at Worlds this year, and I'm really excited to get the whole group together because I don't get to see them because they live halfway across the country. And yeah, that's it. This game's great. This deck's great. Keep playing UVS. Until then, peace out.